Reading Comics Weekly. I'm Tyler Mann, my comic is The Costume Shop, and let's talk about fulfillment. This is what 143 books looks like right here. And they are all real. So today I ended up getting the shipment from Blurb, who is my publisher and my printing house for how I self-publish my comics. And since the Kickstarter for The Costume Shop needs to go about to 60 people, 60 hardcover books plus this smaller employee handbook book, I needed to purchase additional ones to sell at conventions as well as to sell online, to ship out to other people who had pre-ordered the book, and to put into comic stores in Toronto. So I ended up getting about 100 copies of the handbook, as well as 100 copies of the hardcover Season 1 book, which should be coming as well. But I ended up getting the first 143 copies. The first 3 of those copies were proof copies. And I'm going to go over all of this and how I ended up doing it for this project. But it was a lot of work. It was a lot more money than I thought it was. It was a lot of testing and sending proof copies and double checking that everything looks good and making sure I didn't screw anything up, which I did a couple times. But everything ended up looking pretty good, and I'm now waiting just the final shipments. So when talking about fulfillment, there's a couple different ways you can do it. And this goes for any business that you're running. You can either have your physical inventory wherever you are located, wherever your store is located, or wherever you operate your store off of. And this is how you send out your products. You either print out a shipping label from the manager where you manage your store, or you go to a physical Canada Post, in this case, location, and get the printing label and ship everything out yourself. The second option is that you have a drop shipping service. This is a company that will produce the item for you and send it out automatically. And in this case, mine would be Blurb. Blurb is a publishing house or a printing center that prints these books. I design the files for it, I send them the files, and then I get one proof copy to make sure it looks okay, and then I can start selling it online. So anybody can buy it from Blurb, or in this case, when someone purchases it from my online store that I run, I send a notification to Blurb, and they print it out and ship it out for me. The third option is a fulfillment center. Fulfillment center is basically, I take all this physical inventory and I send it to a warehouse. And when an order comes in, I send that notification to the warehouse. They pull the product off the shelf and ship it to the customer for me. And that obviously costs a little bit additional money because you need to pay people to manage the products in a warehouse and pay for the space that you're taking up and pay for the people who are doing it for you. So those are the 3 options. I do a mixture of the first 2, meaning that I manage my own inventory, and like this in this case, and I do it through drop shipping through Blurb. With all the other products that I have, a lot of them are digital fulfillments, or there are fulfillments like t-shirts that also get drop shipped through the website that I'm using, or a lot of them tend to be pins that I make myself, or Vistaprint items like posters or prints, which I end up getting in stock or large quantities first, and then I mail out myself. So the way that it worked with Blurb, in that I get the proof copies, is that first I make the files on InDesign, which is a program used through Adobe, which is good for laying out books, laying out documents. It's very easy to set up a grid system of where you want everything to be located in. In this case, I was setting up a book so I can have spreads or facing pages, so I can see what 2 pages across are going to look like. And then once I have that designed, I upload it to Blurb. And then I have to purchase a proof copy to take a look at it. So you're working on 2 files. You're working on the pages as they appear in the book, and then you're working on the cover. Some books, for example, the soft cover version is just one wraparound image, and that has 3 sections for the front, the spine, and the back. Other ones, like this book, for example, are a hardcover, and they have a larger bleed, meaning that it gets wrapped over the actual book pages itself, because it's on a piece of cardboard there. And it's also 3 things, the front, the spine, and the back. All of them are pretty much standard. You need to have at least 4 pages, or increments of 4 pages, based on the way books are laid out. That's not something that I'd be able to get into on this video, but the way I'm doing the fulfillment is that I contacted Blurb and said I need over 100, 200 books or so, and they gave me a special discount. The maximum I think the Blurb has is about 25% off for more than 50 books, but I was going way over that. In this case, I was getting a total of 240 books printed. 100 for the employee handbook, 100 for the hardcover. And then I got 10 of each of the volume 1, 2, 3, 4 books. These that I can sell at conventions if someone doesn't want to buy a giant hardcover and maybe wants to read only a certain chapter, or for the people who are purchasing on the online store. If this was the one chance that I was having to print it out super cheap, then, or cheaper than it normally would be to print it individually, then by all means I was going to get a large shipment. So I ended up working with someone at their Kickstarter services, or when you're doing like multiple bulk printing services. We worked together to find out how much the books were going to be, how they could be sent, like if I wanted to drop ship them individually. In this case I needed to sign a bunch of the books or deliver them with multiple copies to other people, so it's better that I just ship them all to myself. It was a lot cheaper. But before I ever started with that, to check the book quality, I ended up getting a swatch kit. So this is something you can get for, I think, $5 from Blurb, and then you get a $5 coupon to use elsewhere on the site. And what this includes is all the paper types for all the different kind of books that they have. So they have magazines, they have photo books, and trade books. So in this case I was working with a trade book, and they had a couple different options for economy color, black and white, standard color, or standard black and white. And this is going to represent the quality of the paper. So I actually ended up getting an economy and a standard version of the hardcover book because I wanted to see the quality. It didn't really make that much of a difference because there's not a huge amount of shading in the Costume Shop Season 1, so it didn't really make a difference on the paper quality. Obviously the blacks were a lot richer, but it wasn't really needed. It was a lot better to deliver something that is really well done and a lot cheaper to send out, so I don't end up losing money in the future. And also the difference between economy and standard, it really wasn't that big of a difference. The blacks were a little bit richer, and it made things a little bit easier to see, but with the way that I prepared the files for CMYK versus RGB for printing, it actually ended up looking really good on economy. So it's a really good idea to get a swatch kit like this because you can always feel everything and see everything before it gets sent. And you can always work with the printer to get a free proof copy if you're doing like a large bulk printing. You obviously want to make sure everything looks good. I do the same with Vistaprint, and over quite a few years that I've worked with Vistaprint, I have gotten a lot of swatch kits to be able to see all their products, including what business cards are going to look like and how they'll feel, because there's so many paper types, as well as glossy versus standard or matte printing. So it's really good idea before you do any fulfillment, get a swatch kit, take a look. Some of them are free. Vistaprint definitely does them for free. Blurb does it for like $5. And it's just a good idea to see how everything's going to look before you send it off, and maybe you don't see how it looks to the customer. Maybe the printing's off, the color's off, and it looks a little bit strange, and you don't want your customer complaining about how it doesn't look the same as it does on the website. So that's just a little bit of insight as to the fulfillment that I did for the Costume Shop. I'm still waiting on 100 more books, and this is basically 100 right here of the soft cover. So you can imagine how these big, thick hardcover books are going to take up a lot of space. I couldn't even get all of this onto one shelf, plus the t-shirts and everything I got from Vistaprint for the collector's backers. So if you're actually a backer and you're watching this, thank you so much yet again. Hopefully you guys like these video updates. If you have any questions about something comics related or the process of creating comics that you'd like to ask, drop it in the comments section below and it'll probably be on the next episode. I'm looking to get a couple guests on the next episode, actual comic creators from Toronto. Actual implying I'm not a real one. I mean, a little bit more famous comic creators to do some Skype chats and maybe give a bit of insight as to how they create comics. I'll also be doing a live comics, creating comics panel and a Q&A at Con Bravo in Hamilton in July. So that's last weekend of July. If you want to come by, take a look at the table that I have set up so you can buy some of these comics right here, or you can ask me any ask me any questions about creating comics. I hope you enjoyed this episode, just a quick glance as to how fulfillment works, and I'll see you on the next episode. I'm Tyler Mann, the comic is the Costume Shop, and this has been Creating Comics Weekly. I'll see you next time.